If I'm standing an inch or two taller than I usually do, it's because what I did this morning is something that I often do. I woke up this morning in Washington D.C. with Kathy and Grace, and you'd think that the chair, sitting in the car for 6 hours, driving like a maniac so I can get here by 2 o'clock, would make my spine shrink. But I always find something extraordinarily significant and inspirational about being in Washington, D.C. And I always try to make sure that I do something specifically for that purpose. Usually, and you've heard me ramble about this before, usually I make a point of going up to the Lincoln and reading the Gettysburg Address over here when I'm looking at him, and looking at him, and reading the second inaugural over here, and thinking about it, and thinking, are there lessons in those two speeches that still apply today? And the answer is always yes. And then I turn around and I get his perspective looking out, and I always get that feeling, that confidence that so many of us have when we look up and we see Abe sitting there so firmly in that seat, looking across the water at the Washington Monument, past that to the Capitol, and feeling like he is watching us, and his principles and his values are there watching over this country no matter what is happening outside. I didn't do that this week, but I did three other things. Well, this week, we drove down on Friday, and Kathy's still there for the week. I drove back this morning. So yesterday, we did three things that are really inspirational, and you will see at the end why I think they're all relevant to what we do here at Justice Southbury. The first thing, since we now have Justice Southbury has an insider in Washington, D.C. My daughter Grace, as I think you know, is a press intern for Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro. So she took us to the Capitol building, where we didn't just get to sit up in the gallery, but we were on the floor. And it was the first time I've ever been on the floor. And you walk in, and Mr. Speaker. And the place where the podium from which the president delivers the State of the Union address is right there. And the second and third people in line, the vice president and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, right there. And you look out, and we got to sit in the first couple of rows in the Supreme Court seats. And Kathy and I think are both admitted to the United States Supreme Court, and our girls got to meet Justice Alito and Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and they actually had a conversation with us. But to be right there was incredibly inspirational and moving. And I noticed something that I've never noticed before, either sitting in the gallery on a regular tour or on TV. Up above everybody, so that the House and the Senate sits here when they're combined. Then there's the press sits up behind the Speaker. There's a gallery around, and from the president's perspective, the honored guests are right up there. But above those honored guests, all around, there are 23. I don't know what you call them. They're like marble relief portraits. 23 marble relief portraits over the gallery doors in the House chamber, and they depict historical figures noted for their law giving. There are 23 historic law givers in our House chamber. They include Moses, Justinian, Suleiman, Hammurabi, Jefferson, and a number of others, popes, etc. It's really inspirational to think of the seriousness with which that chamber often, and maybe not often enough, takes their work, and the historic significance of this American experiment, which is now so under attack. So that was really an amazing experience. We took a walk over to the National Archives. And when you walk in the archives, there's the line to see the Constitution and the Declaration are way out the door, but right directly ahead of you is the Magna Carta, the original. Hey, we don't want to put up with kings, although notably it was basically Elon telling Donald, you need to recognize the powers of the rich. So it's not, the Magna Carta wasn't necessarily for the little people, but it was for the people. And that gallery is the David Rubenstein Gallery that starts with the Magna Carta, and then you walk all around, and it talks about Black progress and women's. And one of the things that's interesting when you walk out of the Black progress area, it talks about how with the 15th Amendment, males got the right to vote. And I was with Grace. I said, Grace, what's the word in that sentence that's doing like, that has something missing from it? She said, yeah, males. And then you get on to the females, and you get on to gay rights and other rights, and you get on to the immigrants and others who've not always been favored in this nation. But one of the first things you see when you walk in, to your right, there's a big marble statue, and right behind it, it says, "Study the past." Study the past. One of the quotes on the walls is Eisenhower's 1953 quote that I hadn't heard before. "To be true to one's own freedom is in essence to honor and respect the freedom of all others." That's Eisenhower. The third thing that was amazing, where we stayed. Kathy is, as you can probably imagine, well, she's good at a lot of things. Some of you know that she is now the chair of the Connecticut Community Foundation. So in addition to all the other things she does, she's doing that now. But you probably don't know that she is an absolutely top shelf travel planner. She finds the best hotels and the best places. And this hotel was on a college campus. It's like the conference center hotel on a college campus. The college is Gallaudet University, which is often considered to be the #1 university in the world for deaf and hearing impaired. So we stayed on a campus that is the quietest campus I've ever been on in my life. And I watched groups like this talking with sign language and realizing how all the things we take for granted. You can look away from me right now, you can look at the cars, you can look at other things, you still understand what I'm saying. But the focus they have with each other, they're not looking at phones. They're not looking where they're going. The communication is of just a different nature. And there's something beautiful about watching it. I watched a baseball game where, with a strikeout, the umpire, the catcher threw the ball to the third baseman. They threw it around the infield. There were no, way to go, get him next time. Nothing like that. It was amazing to hear it. And when we walked in, one of the first signs that we saw talked about gesture literacy. I'd never heard of that before. Gesture literacy, which is obviously the concept of we're going to do a lot of things in gestures. We express a lot of communication by the gestures we exchange with each other. And it's important that we learn those things, that we learn how to do that. I will confess, my own knowledge of American Sign Language is kind of limited to this means thank you, and this means something else you. And it's a subtle distinction, but you have to be careful. So there's a beautiful mural on the campus that said, "You matter here." And I've been in all kinds of spaces in my life where the concept of "you matter here" has meant something. If you're gay, you still matter here. If you're black, you still matter here. Women still matter here. It's the first time in my life I'd ever been in a place where the expression was, if you are hearing impaired, you matter here. We will take care of that. We will do something about it. And the best expression of that is there was a sign when you first check in at the desk. There was a sign that said, "Inclusive connections, anytime, anywhere." It said, "At the Kellogg Conference Hotel, we are dedicated to fostering an inclusive and accessible environment for all our guests. We proudly support our deaf and hard of hearing community by providing seamless communication options to ensure you stay connected with ease. For your convenience, iPads are available at the front desk for video calls, including FaceTime and other communication needs. Whether you're reaching out to families, friends, or colleagues, we are here to assist in making your experience as smooth and accessible as possible. Simply let one of our associates know and we'll be happy to help, because every guest deserves to communicate effortlessly, feel welcomed, and stay connected." And there was a real beauty to different than I'd ever really thought of, been aware of, or I had to think about from a social justice aspect. But these three things: being on the House floor and seeing the lawgivers, being in the National Archives and being reminded of those who fought before us in history, being on the campus of a college dedicated to those with particular impairments, all of that makes me stand an inch taller. All that makes me feel great. And it also helped, of course, that the cherry blossoms were totally at peak. That was great. But there are existential challenges to each of these principles. Every single thing of those three things I mentioned, they are all under significant scrutiny and attack. The same way that there are people across the street now, if they're still behind me there, singing and saying, you know, everything this guy says is counter to American values. There are people who are directly, vehemently, and actively opposed to everything I just mentioned. And everything I just described is either already on the chopping block or it is in the queue on the way to the chopping block. As I was driving up here today thinking about my remarks, I was thinking about, I don't know if anyone else here has ever been with a family member talking to an oncologist about a radiation field. Your tumor is here. We are going to radiate here. But a tumor here is likely to spread to here and maybe to here and maybe to here. So we're not just radiating here. There's a radiation field. We are following where the cancer is going to go. We are predicting, with the best tools available to us, what else we have to do to protect you from this growing cancer. And I thought about that as really a metaphor for each of these three things I'm describing. And the dangers to come for each of these principles that are not maybe here yet, but you can just follow that radiation field to where it's going. So the House of Representatives, how long will certain people stand it that there are non-Americans in the House of Representatives showing values? That does not mean MAGA. And at some point, I'm not saying, I haven't heard anything yet saying that, oh, they're going to take those down. But if you follow that radiation field, how surprising would it be to hear a month from now, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, that Doge or someone else has said, yeah, we've got to get the Jewish people and the Muslim people and all these other lawgivers, get them out of here. Marjorie Taylor Greene ought to be up there, and others ought to be up there. So is that going to happen? I don't know. But you can draw a radiation field that says we've got to protect against that. The archives. The National Archives are part of the Smithsonian Institution. The administration over the last couple of days has announced an executive order to eliminate from the Smithsonian, quote, anti-American ideology. And also introduced, in that executive order, it also says that what we're going to celebrate and protect with the Smithsonian is I forgot the phrase. Shoot. It's American progress, American excellence, something. I'm sorry I forgot the phrase. But we're going to stop promoting anti-American values. You know what that means. And we're just going to talk about the best of America, and you know what that means. So, for instance, the Magna Carta and other documents regarding the progress of Americans and other land-owning white males. This is in the David Rubenstein exhibit. And you may have heard of him partly because he's been the chair of the Kennedy Center from 2010 to 2025. And it's not that he had a 15-year term that expired. It is that the present administration decided that David M. Rubenstein, too interested in the Magna Carta and educating Americans about American values, should be replaced by our president, who is now the chair of the Kennedy Center. We were in the bookstore, and in the bookstore I got these goofy little House of Representatives socks, but they also have goofy little books. And you've probably seen these books. They're little children's books, and they have, and Benjamin Franklin with a big head and a little body, and he's holding a kite. And it's who was Benjamin Franklin? Who was George Washington? Who is Barack Obama? Who was John McCain? And thinking, what's going to happen when someone deigns to publish a book, not by Kash Patel, but a children's book saying, who is Donald J. Trump? What's that book going to say? What facts will be included? What facts will be excluded? What claims will be made? We haven't had to think about things like that before. Gallaudet. Gallaudet University, a safe place for, an inclusive place for those who are hearing impaired. As our current president has sought to purge the federal government of all, quote, woke initiatives. You may have seen that agencies have flagged hundreds of words to limit or avoid, according to a compilation of government documents. And when you think about these words that the government wants to strike, we want to get rid of these words. Imagine not that you're that person, but imagine that you're a student at Gallaudet, and you walk into a campus that is as welcoming as I just described it to be. And imagine then that your federal government says, these are words we're not going to allow anymore. Accessible, all-inclusive, barriers, disabilities, disability, equal opportunity, health disparity, health equity, and sense of belonging.